Hey guys, Pete here. This will be my breakdown of Watchmen Season 1, Episode 4. It was directed by Adrij Perek, was written by Damon Lindelof and Crystal Henry, and was titled If You Don't Like My Story, Write Your Own, which appears to be a nod to Chinua Achebe, a rabbit hole that I've yet to go down. We get another major character introduction, more Angela, and a few more clues about what Adrian Veidt is up to. Generally speaking, things seem to move in Episode 4 rather than just asking more questions. And I like the timing of the reveal. It seems like the writers have an awareness of how fans will react and dissect the information. So far, they appear to have a handle on when to give us something to keep our heads in the story without ruining the mystery. While this wasn't my favorite episode out of the 4 that we've seen, it was still a very good hour of television, and it feels like things are moving along full steam ahead. We've had some hints of Lady Trieu in the show and learned some of her backstory from the Peteypedia. In episode 4, she arrives at a home she wants to acquire. To say that she makes a dramatic entrance would be an understatement. With a 3-minute hourglass and a baby in tow, she makes the family an offer they can't refuse for their property. A legacy, a biological child that they were told they would never be able to have. Her plan works, and just in the nick of time. As they sign the papers, something crashes to the earth outside, and we at least see what was up with the urgency, even if we don't fully understand what is happening. We'll learn a little bit more about the trillionaire later in the episode, but first impressions are that she's all business. She tells the couple that she got rich making advanced pharma and biomedical tech. I liked everything about this sequence, from islands in the stream to her saying she would have to destroy the baby. And the characterization and performance is on par with what we've come to expect with this Watchmen series. What crashed to Earth is a complete mystery, but it certainly looked like Lady Trieu and her daughter were expecting it to be there. At her bakery, Angela chops up Will's wheelchair so that she can fit it into a duffel bag and dispose of it later. She cleans up any traces of him being there and accidentally burns the watch over this boy note after she reconsiders destroying it. She gets a message from the Greenwood Center for Cultural Heritage about another branch of Will's family tree being identified, which prompts her to suit up and head over there and break in. There we find out what the cool-looking holographic tree we saw in the trailers actually is. Angela is able to see her great-grandparents and see the image of her grandfather Will as a child. There's a really strong scene here as Angela talks to the image and then asks that her grandfather leave her the fuck alone. At that exact moment, her car falls from the sky, which we've already seen from Laurie's perspective at the end of the last episode. The two women have a quick back and forth about it being Angela's car and that it fell from the sky before Laurie takes off, complimenting Sister Knight's cool costume. Angela recovers her grandfather's pills from the glove box and then heads home. After a talk with Topher and filling in Cal on what's going on, Angela takes the pills to Looking Glass, who we find out has a backyard bunker. He's developing pictures of the last squid fall, and we get the idea that he might be obsessed with the interdimensional nature of them. A squid truther, perhaps? After Angela asks him to get his ex to identify the pills, she also asks him to hold on to the clan robe she found in Crawford's closet. This sets up one of my favorite lines from the episode where LG tells her to watch out for Laurie because she's extremely weird. It's funny because the guy developing squid photos in his backyard bunker said it, but it also points out how the woman who grew up being trained from an early age to become a costume adventurer is actually the one that serves the purpose of bringing the story back down to the ground when it teeters on going completely weird. Sort of. Throughout the episode, Angela is trying to investigate Will and her connection to him while trying to fly under Laurie's radar. As she disposes of the duffel with the wheelchair, she crosses paths with a man in a costume that Red Scare later dubs Lube Man. There's no telling who this character is, but his MO appears to be squirting lubrication that he carries in a holster on his waist over his costume so that he can slide effortlessly into sewer drains. Angela doesn't have time to learn more. After a quick run-in with Keen that acts to remind us that he's probably shady, and a short exchange with Red Scare and Pirate Jenny that reestablishes the police's priorities, she has a conversation with Laurie, who has now taken over Crawford's office. There we learn that the FBI got a match on an unknown set of prints found in Angela's car. They belong to Will Reeves, and the big reveal here is that he was a police officer in New York City in the 1940s and 50s. Angela finds out that her grandfather retired young and disappeared, and we get confirmation that he was in New York City at the time the Minutemen were active, and was a cop, just like Hollis Mason, who was the original Night Owl. Does this mean that he's hooded justice? Not exactly, but it does seem to put him in the right place at the right time. It makes it seem less likely that he wouldn't have some connection to the beginning of costume adventuring, but we'll have to wait to learn more about what role he actually played. He could be Hooded Justice, a lot of people think he is, but there may be more to the story as well. Angela acts like she doesn't know who he is, and as far as what Laurie tells her, it's probable that the FBI haven't realized that they're related yet. Petey comes in to interrupt, which sets up a trip to Trieu Industries. On the ride, Laurie lays out the idea that people who wear masks are driven by trauma. They become obsessed with justice because of some injustice they suffered, usually when they were kids. Sister Night pushes back and asks what trauma she suffered. Laurie asks Agent Petey to fill in the blanks, which he does. He explains that her father, the comedian, attempted to rape her mother, Silk Spectre. He doesn't mention it, but by the end of the comic, we find out that in spite of this happening, her parents went on to have a consensual relationship after the fact, where Laurie was conceived. This whole chain of events, with Laurie being born from her mother loving a man that she should have probably hated, played a role in Dr. Manhattan returning to Earth. He referred to it as a thermodynamic miracle, which is what Laurie is referring to when she talks about Angela's car being stolen on the night of Crawford's murder and being returned on the night of his funeral. Wherever Laurie is, there's a strong connection to the source material, and that holds true when they arrive to meet Lady Trieu. After getting a look at the drone craft that Agent Blake points out would be the perfect thing to steal Angela's car with, the pair are invited into Trieu's vivarium by her daughter. The vivarium looks like the one Adrian Bate had at Karnak, his Antarctic retreat in the original graphic novel, which also is where he was last presumed to be before it was announced that he went missing in 2012. Everything about Lady Trieu hints that she might be following in Ozymandias' footsteps, including the aged-up sculpture she has of him inside her own private Vietnam. When asked about it, she calls him a truly great man, and says so much of my success grew from the seed of his inspiration. But we all know there are no real true heroes or villains in Watchmen, so the fact that she comes off like the bad guy is all the more confusing. Bottom line is that we find out that she helped Will escape thanks to a conversation that she has in Vietnamese with Angela, and we get the feeling that she might be the one who imprisoned Ozymandias. After their encounter, Angela goes to find out what Cal told Laurie when she dropped by to interview him. He lied for her, even though he hates to do it, which we already had a feeling about because he couldn't lie to the kids, telling them that Judd was in heaven. We also learned that he was involved in an accident, and it might have something to do with them meeting each other in Vietnam. Back at Trieu Industries, we see Beyond wake up from a nightmare. She has a mysterious IV attached to her arm that bears the Trieu logo, and after she tells her mother about the dream of being marched away from her village after men came to burn it, she just goes back to bed. Not before telling Mr. Reeves goodnight though, and we see that Will is indeed in league with Lady T. She's concerned that Will left the pills behind for Angela to discover. His counter is, why is she doing the same type of thing to her daughter? And after saying it's completely different, Lady T explains that she's afraid that the family connection will cause Will to lose his resolve. He says it won't. We discover he could walk the whole time, and that there is something coming up in 3 days that they're planning that will cause Angela to hate him. He reiterates that he's all in, and the episode ends with him repeating tick-tock, tick-tock while gazing up at the construction of her tower. In the Adrian Bate story, we learn quite a lot without getting any real answers. The clones of Mr. Phillips and Miss Crookshanks are trapped in crab or lobster pots after they start to grow in a lake. Adrian then loads them into a growth accelerating machine and they come out fully formed. But hey, it's not completely unbelievable because it takes some time before they can talk. Bate says that he's been there for 4 years, which confirms that the candles on the cakes correspond to the passage of 1 year between each anniversary. He also calls it a prison, and he makes his intention to escape it known. He uses the trebuchet he built to launch the clone corpses into the air, and we watch as they pass through the invisible barrier that appears to surround him and disappear. I'll say the same thing I said last week in regard to the Bate part of the story. We still don't know where he is or what exactly is going on, but it feels right in that we're learning more each time we visit. I think that's what's impressing me most about the whole Watchmen experience right now. There are a lot of questions hanging over our heads in the story, but the show is doling out enough answers that it ends up coming out like it's leading us somewhere rather than trying to outsmart us. Not to say that we shouldn't expect for obvious outcomes to be subverted, but the storytelling feels tight, which is pretty exciting considering some of the things that we've seen unfold on the screen. While we got introduced to some new mysteries, the main ones are still intact. Did Will actually kill Crawford? Who imprisoned Ozymandias, and where exactly is he in relation to the rest of the story? Is the 7th Cavalry being led by someone to serve a larger purpose? After episode 4, all of these questions feel like they could be connected. At the same time, what are the chances that Lady Trieu is behind all of it and the series ends with her being found out and dealt with? We can expect some twists and turns, but right now, I don't think we should expect that we won't get answers. Angela is a character who's earned our trust in the sense that her motivations are fairly clear. Her boss and good friend got killed. Her grandfather that she just learned about says he did it, and she's trying to make sense of what's happening. She's just following through like most of us would if we were presented with the same situations. We have to like that about her, but we've also watched her torture a guy to get answers, which means we know she's flawed. She's a real character. She's not someone that is a hero in that traditional sense. Lady Trieu's introduction makes her look like she's the opposite of Angela, and in the same way, she's probably not a pure villain. There's a lot going on we got introduced to, but we don't have a lot of answers. If they can keep this same balance going, that's a pretty satisfying place to be. We need to know a lot more about Will. They've given us a time frame of 3 days until something's going to happen. It seemed like they were saying in 3 days that the project would be complete, the Millennium Clock, whatever that does, other than just tell time. So we won't have to wait for a really long time to figure out what's going on with him. Ozymandias is the same kind of situation. We know he disappeared in 2012. We've seen 4 years pass in his story. We can reasonably expect that he's going to collide with the main story in the present timeline. How that's going to go down is anybody's guess, but certainly he's flinging things out of his enclosure. They're going somewhere. It's all a test so that he can do the same thing for himself. I mean, that seems like the best guess. Laurie kind of took a back seat here again as Angela took over the main driving of the episode, and her influence on the story, like I said, feels more like a lasso to pull things back in. We know a lot about her backstory from the original comic series. The PDPDO was all about her this week, so we learned some more about her, and her file is an interview that's redacted, so we don't get a crystal clear picture, but we see how she came to be in a position where she had to work for them at the very least. Things are moving in the right direction. It feels pretty darn tight at this point. I haven't lost one bit of interest. The mysteries just get deeper, but at the same time, it feels like answers will be delivered. So let me know in the comments what you thought about episode 4. How have your positions on what the answers to the mysteries might be have changed? Where do you think things are headed? How do you think it will all play out? What are your favorite theories? This week I should have some bonus videos to follow up on this. I will definitely do a trailer breakdown next as soon as I finish my Mr. Robot video, so be on the lookout for that, and please subscribe. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and let me know in the comments what you'd like to see as far as bonus material. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.